This is one of the first consumer 6-core CPUs, the AMD Phenom 2 X6 1035T from 2010. Modern 6-core CPUs are reasonably power efficient due to improvements in manufacturing. Something like the recent Ryzen 5 9600X has a rated TDP of just 65 watts. But this Phenom draws over half of that while idle. But in this video, I'm going to see how much I can reduce the CPU's power draw by undervolting it. Undervolting is essentially running a piece of hardware at typical speeds but with less voltage to reduce power consumption and heat output. Since I live in Jamaica, it gets hot outside very often, especially in the middle of May when I'm filming this. That affects the ambient temperature of the PC, which has terrible airflow due to the shitty OEM case. This dusty stock air cooler doesn't help with temperatures either. So by undervolting, I hope to reduce the CPU's heat output, making everything cooler, reducing energy usage, and increasing the PC's lifespan. Looking back, I probably should have opened the side panel to let more air in.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm kind of retarded.
CPU undervolting is usually done by going into your PC's BIOS and adjusting settings from there. But since this is in an HP Tower PC and OEMs famously hate users fucking with deep settings, there are no CPU options in the BIOS at all. The only information is the CPU's name and the amount of cache. So to get around this, I downloaded a program called AMD Overdrive, which talks directly to the chipset from the OS and allows you to do stuff like adjust clocks, voltages, and other CPU settings without poking in the BIOS. Similar programs would be Intel Extreme Tuning Utility for Intel processors and Ryzen Master for modern AMD CPUs. I opened Overdrive, signed my death warrant, and went to the clock/voltage section. But before I adjusted anything, I first had to evaluate the stock behavior of the CPU. I opened CPU-Z, which shows information about the processor and also performs benchmarks with comparisons against other CPUs. I benchmarked the Phenom against the weakest CPU listed, the Intel Core 2 Duo E8500, a 2-core 2-thread chip from 2008. I got a single-threaded score of 135.5 points and a multi-threaded score of 722.8 points. Against the E8500, it barely beats it out in the multi-threaded results and actually loses in the single-threaded test. Which sounds stupid until you remember AMD was kind of the shittier option before Ryzen came out.
Get out.
I ran a torture test on Prime 95, which runs large calculations on your processor that puts an intense load on it, maxing out the usage and outputting a ton of heat. I'm also using Hardware Monitor to monitor temperatures and CPU usage. The CPU was getting maxed out at 99% usage, drawing 111 watts, and the temperature quickly began rising. After 20 minutes of torture, the CPU was at 67 degrees Celsius and had a peak temperature of 69 degrees Celsius. There are also 3 vague motherboard temperatures listed, but I'm not entirely sure what they are. I ran Cinebench R23 to get another benchmark figure. It didn't seem to be hitting the CPU as hard as Prime 95, as the temperatures only shot up to around 61 degrees as opposed to 69 degrees. The scene took long as fuck to fully render though. Modern CPUs blow through this in seconds. But maybe we should cut the Phenom some slack, as there's a 14% chance it's older than you. In the end, I got a multi-core score of 2063 points. I didn't bother doing the single-core benchmark because I don't feel like waiting 3 hours just to get shit on by an older chip. Good job, AMD. Now it's time to perform the undervolt. I went back into AMD Overdrive and located the CPU voltage slider. Adjusting it upwards increases the voltage, while adjusting it downwards reduces the voltage to the CPU. Pretty self-explanatory. So I clicked on the slider and pressed the down arrow key once to reduce the CPU's voltage by 125 millivolts. I clicked apply and accepted AMD's second warning saying I can't sue them if my PC blows up. It worked, and I was now running my CPU at 1.215 volts instead of the stock 1.225 volts. Since the PC didn't crash, I kept going lower and lower until this happened. I tried 1.025 volts and the PC instantly turned off, meaning the voltage was too low and the CPU couldn't function. So I tried gradually increasing it to find the lowest voltage the CPU can run on, with varying results. Sometimes it survived the initial voltage drop, but when I tried opening CPU Z, Windows blue screened with the stopcode WHEA uncorrectable error, which is common when you f with your CPU like this. At 1.05 volts, I was able to open CPU Z. It reports the core voltage as 2.16 volts, but I think that's just a software bug, so let's just focus on what Overdrive reports. When I tried doing the benchmark, the PC locked up and blue screened. Sometimes it blue screened as soon as I clicked the button. At 0.75 volts, it seemed to be stable. I did the CPU Z benchmark with no problems, so the next step was running a Prime 95 torture test. It seemed to be handling it fine, but then the PC blue screened after 1 minute. Then I tried 1.1875 volts. Not only was I able to perform the CPU Z benchmark, the CPU was also able to survive 20 minutes of Prime 95 torture. That's an undervolt of 375 millivolts and it's confirmed stable. Looking at temperatures, the CPU takes longer to heat up and it only gets to around 62 degrees Celsius with a max temperature of 64.4 degrees Celsius. The clock speeds are the same too, so we shouldn't be losing any performance. Next, I ran Cinebench R23 and I got a multi-core score of 2065 points, which is actually 2 points higher than the previous score of 2063. I think that might just be due to margin of error though. CPU Z-Bench got a single-threaded score of 130.9 and a multi-threaded score of 690.9, which is slightly worse than our original scores, but then again, that could just be margin of error. Looking at the power draw though, it draws the same 111 watts on the max load and 41 watts while idle, according to Hardware Monitor.
It's your main man Knuckles, and we're Media Herd. You ready to go in space? Help me get the emeralds.
And that was me undervolting an AMD Phenom 2 from 16 years ago.
I got the USB cord, it's plugged to my microphone. I'm gonna talk to the power. I can't pay electric bill.